AI is a liberating technology because it gives you information and tools that may have been locked up or not given to you because you weren't privileged enough to have them in your job. Companies are going to get access to a lot of data about individuals too. So that's where I think a lot of this is going to go. But there could be a little bit of backlash against it.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome to AI and the Future of Work, episode 354. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Our community is growing. If you haven't yet signed up for our newsletter, do it. You will hear some tips, maybe some fun facts that don't always make it into the weekly show. And you get smarter while you sleep. It'll be delivered to your inbox. We never spam you. Join us there. We are all in this together, of course. If you like what we do, if you enjoyed today's discussion, or any other for that matter, share it with just one friend. That's all we ask. They'll know you care about using AI to make humans better. And if you're listening and someone you know shared this with you, tell them thanks and maybe pay it forward. Of course, if you leave a comment, I just may share it in an upcoming episode like this one from George in Dallas, who's the CEO of an IT managed services provider. George's favorite episode is the special episode from last December with John Chambers from Cisco. George said he listened to it 3 times back to back to back to learn from all the wisdom John shared. It is full of wisdom. Go check that one out. We'll put a link in the show notes. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly. And of course, the added bonus, you get one AI fun fact. Here it is for today. Alok Agarwal writes in Policy Circle that alarmist AI job loss predictions need a reality check. In it, he says the dystopian future projected by AI job loss doomsayers is unlikely in the next decade. The reasons: artificial intelligence systems remain relatively primitive, costly to maintain, and are hitting performance ceilings. The much feared job displacement may eventually arrive, but not before the 2030s. Organizations rarely change their processes overnight. Shifts in business operations occur when there's a clear and measurable impact on key performance indicators like cost, revenue, speed, and quality. Even when these conditions are met, adoption of new technologies is gradual. The problem becomes more severe when AI agents are chained together to complete complex tasks, with each agent operating at 92% accuracy. A series of 10 agents yields an overall success rate of just 44%. A Carnegie Mellon simulation of a virtual software company staffed entirely by agents confirmed this. I can attest to that. I read that whole write-up. And I'll link to the full article. It's a very thoughtful article, quite lengthy. My commentary on this: use reliable data and note your sources. As Alok did in this write-up. I did a similar analysis recently for a talk to CIOs, and I used the transportation industry as a case study, really just to educate myself, make sure I tested some of my own hypotheses. Although many of the 8.1 million human drivers for app-based rideshare services and taxi companies may be displaced by self-driving vehicles, we're likely to see the creation of 103 million new jobs in fields like urban planning, data analysis, policy creation and enforcement, and of course, design, maintenance, and engineering to support the self-driving economy. Innovation is always a catalyst for creativity, and creativity always leads to new tools, industries, and jobs. This transformation is scary, but learn to question your sources and do your own analysis before assuming bots are our adversaries. Take a lesson from the handloom weavers, horse-drawn buggy drivers, and switchboard operators who reskilled and embraced and participated in progress in the past. That's how the next generation of leaders always emerges. Now, shifting to this week's great conversation. Today's guest last joined us on episode 278 back in November of 2023. He is still one of the most respected thought leaders in the HR and HRTech space. Josh Bersin's name is synonymous with HR thought leadership. He first started covering the space in 2001 before selling Bersin Associates to Deloitte in 2012. His current namesake company, the Josh Bersin Company, hosts the popular annual conference Irresistible and is a prolific publisher of content related to the future of work. Josh is also the author of the popular book, Irresistible, The 7 Secrets of the World's Most Enduring Employee-Focused Organizations. Oh, and he also hosts a great podcast with thoughtful and provocative insights into the changing world of work. Without further ado, Josh, I've been looking forward to this one. Welcome back. Let's have you share a bit of an update. It's been nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
A little bit has changed to catch us up.
Well, I'd say in terms of the world of work, people are pretty freaked out about all the AI hitting their jobs and roles and responsibilities and companies. I think the CFOs and CEOs are very excited, and the employees are kind of nervous. There's just actually a study came out today from LinkedIn that employee pessimism and fear is at an all-time high. So we're going through a pretty massive transformation of what we do and how we do it in the business environment. And the technology is advancing as fast as I've ever seen. I've never seen technology advance so fast. But the ability to redesign the company to use it is actually a big challenge. So that's huge. I don't know if we talked about that a lot last time. And for us, having done HR for so long, we have this old discipline, many, many years old, of org design that, and I've read a bunch of these books. You can kind of toss them all away now because everything about org design, spans of control, role responsibilities, skills associated with roles, and how we hire and give people goals, and how we measure people, and succession management, and all those things are kind of getting thrown to the side as we redesign jobs to be more automated and use agents as digital humans doing different things. So I have a lot of things to talk about there, Dan. And then one more thing that's new for me is we launched our own agent called Galileo, which is dedicated to HR. So we're now a provider of AI. And so we've had a lot of hands-on experience building one of these, and we know a lot about what people are going through.
You were just launching it when we last recorded an episode. It was brand new. Now, I mentioned in the fun fact about perceptions versus reality in terms of AI and job elimination. I obviously shared my perspective. I have a strong one like you. What's your perspective on what we read in the popular press versus what's happening in the trenches?
Well, there was a flurry of articles the last couple of weeks that new hires, college grads, are having a hard time finding work because of AI. And then Dario Amodei from Anthropic made a statement that 50% of white-collar jobs are going to go away. So there have been a lot of inflammatory comments made by different people, a lot of times by tech vendors. I don't see that happening at all. I'm with you. In some sense, every time we automate or eliminate some form of routine work for some human being, that human being now has time to do something new, and they come up with new ideas. And the CEO says, great, now that you guys all have 20% more productivity, let's figure out what to do with that 20% time to double our revenue. So there's all sorts of economic factors that build creativity machines inside of companies, and that is what makes a company successful. And so, eliminating routine work, creates what we call super workers. And the more super workers you have, the more creative you are to grow. And the more you grow, the more you hire people. Now, as a young person coming out of college, or early in your career, this is a particularly difficult time because most companies are in this temporary stage of, we're spending a bunch of money on AI, let's stop hiring. Because it's expensive to buy these tools. So there's a sort of numbers, dollars and cents issue of CFOs saying, well, the AI project, quote unquote, or program is a productivity program. So I'm going to watch over you guys while you implement all this AI, and I'm going to make sure you don't hire anybody because we're trying to get rid of the number of people. But I think that's temporary because once this stuff gets institutionalized inside the company, we don't even know it's AI anymore. We just use it and we build on top of it. So I don't really buy that, concept that we're going to run out of things to do.
I hope not. That's the dystopian future. So you're talking to a million leaders and future leaders who are hanging on your every word. And we here get to counter some of the misinformation that we're fed outside of this podcast. I know that you spend almost all your time in the field, meeting customers, hearing their stories. Can you share maybe an example of or multiple customers and how they're
Sure.
thinking about integrating AI into business process and kind of with respect to eliminating or consolidating jobs versus augmenting existing ones?
Yeah, I mean, if you simplify the broad, very complex issue, there's kind of two approaches. There's let the flowers bloom, give everybody a copy of the Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, whatever it may be, and let them all figure out. Maybe we give them some training how to automate the work they're currently doing. And I think that's a good way to build AI literacy and to get people comfortable that they're not going to get laid off, and it will eventually, and it does create all sorts of innovative ideas like, oh my God, I just realized that if I use ChatGPT for this, we don't have to do that. So the person doing that says, well, wait a minute, what about me? Well, maybe I better help you with that project you're doing. And I think that's a positive thing because some of this is just literacy that employees feel like they know what this stuff is capable of. But then the bigger issue or opportunities is really re-engineering the company, where somebody at a more senior level says, while all these flowers are blooming, we got a couple of gigantic trees that we want to fix or improve. Let's focus there. So the head of strategy and the CHRO of Standard Chartered Bank, which is a big global bank, does business in 130 countries. She said, I had a big meeting with her on this, and she said, well, we decided strategically, we love everybody using these tools, but we decided strategically there are two things that matter the most. The number one is wealth management clients. So we want an AI engine or bot or tool or system for the wealth management advisors and for their customers too, to manage their wealth, because that's where, a very high percentage of our revenue comes from. So they're building that. Another example of that, by the way, is Allianz, who built an AI-based claims digital twin for claims, because they, processing claims isn't the only thing they do, but it's a big part of what they do. And it turned out that when they looked at it, there were lots and lots of opportunities to digitize the whole process. Another example, just one third one, was also at Standard Charter. She told me that, because they do business in all these different countries, if you look at the number of hours people spend on maybe what you might call, non-strategic, quote unquote, work, a very high percentage of it goes into account opening. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. And she said, well, it actually is very complicated, because if you're a big global company or if you're a wealthy person and you have to open accounts in a bunch of different countries, we have to do all sorts of regulatory things between these different countries. We have to file all sorts of papers. We have a giant call center that does this. So they're building an AI to do that. So I think the right approach is, while the flowers are blooming and people are coming up with great ideas, you got to pick a couple of big bets, because you're going to do different things with those big bets that may not happen organically. And this is, happening faster and faster and faster. And I think now that people are much more comfortable with the potential power of these AI tools, creativity is everywhere.
What I hear in the subtext of those stories is so many new opportunities and jobs that will be created to support the launch and the care and feeding of these bots, and make sure they're being used responsibly and nourished with data. That's what I hear.
No, absolutely. And most of the people that I talk to are maybe they don't know a lot about the AI engine under the covers, but they're very bright and they know their businesses very well. And once they get familiar with what this thing can do, then they're like, well, why don't we try this? Let me give you another example. So we have a client using Galileo, which is IATA, the industry association for the airline industry. The airline industry is on fire. I mean, I think there's going to be something like 500 new airplanes purchased in the next year. I mean, there's just massive growth in the airline industry. She gets talent and skills data from Boeing and Airbus on the roles that they expect are going to be needed to maintain and sell and fly and, take care of all these planes. She consolidated that data using AI, using our tool, but it's an AI engine. And she built a 5-year model for the future skills of every role in every airline. And that is in an AI form now. So any airline HR person or executive or hiring person or CFO can use that model to plan what their company's readiness is for these future skills in airline. And by the way, it's changing a lot. Skills in space related technologies and things that, I didn't even think were really part of the airline industry are in there. So, I mean, if she did that by hand, it would probably take a year and it would be a book and you'd have to read the book.
Brilliant example. And those abound. And everyone listening should realize that the closer you put your ear to the ground, the more you hear stories like that.
Let me bring up another point, Dan, that I think your audience might be interested in. Fundamental thing that's different about AI, as well as the technology itself, is the fact that this is one of the first IT tools that I've ever seen, and since maybe the spreadsheet, that turns everybody into a programmer. I mean, spreadsheets were like this. When you first looked at a spreadsheet and it was a bunch of boxes, you didn't know what to do with it. But once you figured out that it was your canvas for doing what you needed to do, oh my God, I can build this and I can do this and I can do this. And little did we know, it would automate a lot of things in companies. Well, AI is in some ways the same thing. If you really know what the prompting technology does and you really learn how to do it, you're going to be, in the sense, a software developer, and because you're building mini apps to automate your work or to automate a whole bunch of people's work yourself without having to learn a software language and go through the coding process. So I think we're going to unleash a lot of creative invention from non-technical people who just are good at learning new tools that don't require you to go, oh, I need to go hire an engineer and, figure out who the right engineer is and, try to explain what I'm trying to do to them. And we see this in HR. I mean, HR people, most of them are not highly technical, but we just had a series of meetings with HR people yesterday. They're telling us things they're doing with Galileo that are just absolutely incredibly creative because they can just talk to it and iterate on the design. And then you can ask the AI to improve the prompt itself for you. And then you can share the prompt with other people. So there's kind of a new world of creativity here. And I think for IT, I know a lot of your listeners are IT people. Yes, we're going to want to buy off-the-shelf solutions, but I think this is going to be a lot of roll your own too. There's a lot of opportunity for you to build your own solutions here that we didn't have in sort of the more ERP era of IT.
Now, as prep for this conversation, I listened to a very thoughtful commentary that you recorded about autocracy versus democracy. And specifically, very, very interesting, by the way. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
But specifically as it applies to, I'll call it kind of the evolving relationship that employees have with their employer. With respect to this conversation we've been having about the incursion, depending on, that might be a charged word, but the incursion of AI into traditional work, is AI an opportunity to liberate employees and make them feel like the environment they're in is more democratic? Or is it maybe also an opportunity for them to feel like they're more tightly restricted by the rules implied by their organization?
Well, I think liberated is the word I would use too, Dan. I think for many people, not everybody, AI is a liberating technology because it gives you information and tools that may have been locked up or not given to you because you weren't privileged enough to have them in your job. And some people will really use that very, very effectively, and they will, find new careers for themselves. They'll become, whatever the future of influencers are. There'll be some super influencers who are experts at AI, or they'll become really valuable experts inside the company at some of these tools. And this happens whenever there's a new technology. On the flip side, of course, we can monitor and measure everything now as a company. So every, in the Microsoft graph, just to take Microsoft as an example, the Microsoft graph, which the Microsoft Copilot accesses, knows every email you sent, every meeting you're in, every Teams recording that was recorded. So in some sense, that big Microsoft technology database knows almost everything about your work. And if you go back and analyze it, it could assess your skills, it could assess your engagement, it could assess your quality of work. And so, I think over time there'll be a lot of discussions about this. Companies are going to get access to a lot of data about individuals too. Um, I'm on the HR side of things, so I tend to have sort of the rose-colored glasses. That usually this is used for positive purposes to understand how we can improve performance, improve engagement, better develop leaders, identify people that are in the wrong roles, and so forth. So that's where I think a lot of this is going to go. But there could be a little bit of backlash against it. And I mean, what I was really talking about in that podcast was this. And this is true for everybody who's ever had to manage a project or a team, is this dichotomy or this paradox of how much empowerment do we want to facilitate and when do we stop it and tell people what to do? And it goes back to the very beginning of our conversation about AI itself. Do we let everybody decide what they want to do with it, or we tell them what to do with it?
What obligation do you feel employers have to share how and when decisions are being made using potentially AI collected, I shouldn't say generated, AI collected data to make decisions that might impact those employees?
It's a really good question. Okay, so I'm not in a position to mandate what anybody does, but I'll tell you what my research shows, and I've done a lot of research on this. The thing that drives organizational performance over time is trust and commitment, because skills and technologies and products and markets change all the time. So you want your people to be, really part of the team and just to lean into the team regardless of what's happening. And one of the elements of trust is transparency. If people find out by accident that the company's spying on them, or I don't know what they may be doing, you've broken that trust. And even though they may not quit, you've just lost a very significant asset of employee engagement, innovation, creativity, growth that you didn't have before. So I think the more transparent you are, the better, to be honest. The second reason that that's good is that employees have really good ideas. And what you want to do is you want them to bring them forward. And sometimes their ideas will challenge the status quo, and you have to be okay with that. And if you're the type of leader that wants to sort of keep things to yourself and, secretly command the battleship from the corner, and you're not willing to listen, you're missing out on all those what we call employee activations. If you're a retailer, if you're in the transportation industry, in the hospitality industry, in the media industry, any customer-facing industry, all the good ideas come from the front line. So that's another reason why transparency is so valuable. So I would say, regardless of what I tell you to do, there's good reasons to do it.
And you said the most important thing, the foundational component is trust. Any research that you look at, I'm sure your primary research reveals that employees that feel trusted and valued and respected are the ones who perform the best, and they contribute to organizations that perform the best.
And the interpretation of that, here's why I think it is true. So just so you understand it, people are voting with their lives to work for your company. They're spending most of their waking hours with your company. So, it's not like buying a new car or buying a product on Amazon. If I don't like the product, I can return it. This is a life decision. So if you let them down, you've hurt them in a very sort of painful place. That's why you have so much potential to improve performance through engagement, through career growth, through development, through new opportunities. Because human beings are very adaptable animals. This is another thing that keeps coming up in these conversations about AI. AI is not human. It's a very, very fast reasoning system, but we have emotions and we have ambitions and we have, human energy from our various relationships with people. We have caring. There's things that people do that make companies successful that are very unique to them. And when you tap into that well of desire, you build a great company, and the company is just more resilient over change. So I don't want to get too religious about all this, but that's kind of, the way I've learned about the world.
Work throughout history is a source of meaning for humans. And it's really all a continuum. That concept transcends AI. It predates AI. It postdates AI. What are your thoughts about what some would feel is the irony of talking about using quote machine labor to humanize work versus dehumanize work?
Well, I think personifying AI is a mistake. I think that's actually, I hate it that people are doing this. It's all over the place. I mean, the AI will talk to you. It will listen to you. It will do work for you. It will take your orders, etc. That doesn't mean it's a human. We are biological, genealogical animals with millions of years of genealogy and biology in every single one of our cells of our bodies. And so everything that we know how to do now into 2025 or whenever people listen to this podcast is the culmination of what human beings have learned how to do for eons. It's not as simple as a neural network that has good tuning knobs on it. It's much, much more complex than that. So I don't think AI is going to take over our lives or rule over us. It's going to take away a lot of routine work. It's going to give us, it's a super, super duper duper tool. And, it's the most powerful white collar tool maybe we will ever have, at least so far, for many things. And it can learn. I mean, it does learn on its own, but it doesn't have the genetic capability to learn the way humans do. So, I just think in the business setting, forgetting about entertainment and other applications, what differentiates companies is the way you solve a problem, not the fact that you solve a problem. In every industry where you decide you're going to go build a product in whatever market, there's already a bunch of people doing it. You're never the only one, but you do it differently because you have a new approach, a new idea, a new value proposition, a new technology, a more creative product, a more innovative product, whatever it may, or maybe a cheaper product. Those are the human decisions that get made every day in business that differentiate your company. And what happens in my experience, the reason I use the word enduring a lot is even if your company's doing great, something will come along and interrupt that. Competitor, market, regulatory, whatever it may be. And all of a sudden, you've got to scratch your head and say, oops, now what do we do? I mean, you can ask the AI for advice, and I'm sure it will be helpful, but there's still a lot of human creativity in business, and there always will be. I'm just completely convinced of that. So I think of them as really great tools that are fun to use.
Replay that, everyone listening. That last answer, brilliant. It's a big part of why we have this podcast in the first place. Don't anthropomorphize the bot. It only knows what we teach it. Don't give it a birth certificate. Don't put it on the org chart. But use it as a tool. Let it make you, as Josh says, a super worker. Now, from the perspective of HR and kind of the evolving discipline of HR, you also introduced the concept of a super manager. Mm-hmm. Talk us through how a super manager uses these new tools to hopefully manage super workers.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, a super worker, the idea of a super worker is pretty obvious, but assume you have AI well implemented in your company or your team and people are using it and they're all creating their own little prompts and analyzing data really fast and getting advice and writing beautiful emails and all those wonderful things. So they're all of a sudden 30% more productive and they're sharing information with each other and coming up with all sorts of creative ideas. And you're getting maybe twice as much output per dollar of wages than you were in the past. That's the idea of a super worker team or a super worker company. So what's the role of the manager? So the first question a lot of HR people ask is, what happens to span of control? Do we need fewer managers? Maybe now that we have the AI can be a manager. Maybe we don't need a manager because the AI can give them advice. We're just starting this research and we're interviewing a lot of companies, but so far, what we've seen is that the human issues remain. If you have a team of 10 brilliant engineers, each of whom went to Stanford, MIT, have PhDs in AI, and are each building the next generation AI that's going to make your company the most important bank or whatever it is on the planet, what if they don't get along with each other? What if they step on each other's toes? What if they don't know who's supposed to do what? What if one of them wants a raise because he just got a job offer from OpenAI? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are still management issues. But a super manager, as we would define it, has to understand all that stuff, which is the basics of management as it exists today, but also understand this creative impulse that people are going to have to learn how to use the AI and be more creative in their roles. So in some sense, the super manager is a great manager and a great leader who obviously knows enough about AI to be aware of what it can do, but also almost leading an R&D group in a way, because a lot of us have never led R&D. I mean, I've been involved in development of a lot of stuff, but if you've been a line manager or a supervisor and you have somebody who's playing around creating something, you might say, hey, what are you wasting your time on? Get back to work. I think a super manager is going to be somebody with more understanding of the creative process, the job re-engineering process. By the way, one of the other things that's a big management issue right now is redesigning the jobs themselves. These jobs don't redesign themselves. We have a lot of legacy, very, very old-fashioned job architectures in companies, and that's a huge problem. And sometimes the HR department tries to get their heads wrapped around it. Sometimes they don't. And so you as a manager are going to have to make a lot of decisions about, well, now that we have this AI thing, why don't we take this role away from you and give it to this person so they can use it in the AI, and then you can work more on this other stuff that you're really good at, right? All of those kinds of things. So there's still lots and lots of things for managers to do. And I think it's going to be less execution-oriented management and a lot more focus on empowering, developing, redesigning, reinventing, and aligning people towards the goal of the team.
A lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this and wondering if their AI first version of some incumbent's existing platform, where the incumbent is attaching an AI feature to their platform, but the AI first, let's say maybe a startup or an emerging growth company, is thinking about that thing as being a standalone AI product. Who wins? What does the world look like?
Yeah, and that is a really good question. Okay. So I've been through this multiple technology cycles. So I get emails all day from startups. Some of them were kids right out of school, right? They actually built the tool while they were in graduate school, and then they just decided to run it as a company. And some of them have done amazing things. An example is the tools that allow job candidates to apply to 100 companies at the same time with an AI. You can basically go to a website and give it your bio and say, I'd like to apply to every company in North America in this industry, and it'll just do it for you. So somebody built that. That wasn't built by a traditional HR technology company. But generally what happens is most of these vendors, when they come to market and they have to actually sell their product to HR people and HR departments, they run into the same issues of everybody else who's ever done this. Does it integrate with this? Does it talk to that? Does it connect to my payroll system? Does it connect to my survey system? Does it connect to my job architecture system? Does it connect to my whatever? And then they're dealing with the buying cycle of an HR professional wondering if he or she can trust this vendor to be around long enough to rely on it, because the HR buyer who buys your tool has their job on the line if you fail. So if you're a startup and they've banked on you and you just got out of college and 2 years later you decide, this is no fun, we're going to just shut it down, do something else. Well, all those customers are stranded. So it's a serious market, and it's a big, big, big market. But that's also misleading. Because it's big, there's many, many, many players. So whatever you invent might be novel for a while, like maybe a few months, but somebody will copy it, and the incumbent vendors will eventually try to do what you're doing. Now, I'm not trying to slow down people who are innovators, because all of the great ideas in HR tech come from innovators, and there's some incredibly innovative stuff going on. But it's a business, not a technology market. And I would say maybe 5 or 10% of the HR buyers like buying something that's brand new just because it's cool. There's not, you're dealing with a fairly conservative market here, where people want to make sure that what they buy is going to really work and be around for a while.
So pragmatic and so soul crushing for entrepreneurs. What's your coaching? When that kid out of grad school comes?
Well, I think I encourage him to go for it. That's we try to help him, explain to him what the market's like, because all you need is one good customer to get you started, and then all of a sudden you learn what the next person's going to ask for. So, but it's a crowded, very competitive market.
Okay, we'll leave that one dangling. Slightly dissatisfying, but I got to get you off the hot seat. This is one of those conversations, Josh, where I wish we had a different format and we could carry on longer. But I do have to get you off the hot seat, but not before you answer one last very important question for me.
Sure.
We've been talking about what's changed in the last couple of years since we last had you on. When Josh and Dan record the next version of this, hopefully it's not another 2 years, but let's just say, it's 2027. What are we talking about that is fundamentally changed in 2 years?
That's a good question. I would anticipate that between now and then, we're going to have some form of a recession. It's been a long time, and I feel like it's overdue. And the next one could be, fairly significant. They're always surprising. So we'll be talking about that and what has been coming out. What is the re-engineering process around that? I'm sure we'll be talking about technology and the role of technology at work. It's funny. I think the topics we're going through now, leadership, management, roles, jobs, careers, skills, technology, are the same conversations I've had with companies 20 years ago. It was just different technology. It was the internet, or it was mobile phones, or whatever it was on the time. I also think, because companies are becoming so much more flexible and people work in so much more flexible job arrangements, we'll be talking much more about, I think, creative types of businesses and types of organizations, networks of people working on things together, individuals making good careers without having to be 100% affiliated with one company. What we used to call gig work, which I think doesn't really do it justice, is going to be much, much more prevalent 2 or 3 years from now. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it, Dan.
Brilliant. We're going to have lots of opportunities to hang out more and unpack that one. I know that you're active on all the socials. Where can the audience connect with you?
JoshBersin.com is the main website. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I have a lot of followers on LinkedIn. I'm in there a lot. I'm on X, which I don't use as much as I used to. And I have a few more social media accounts floating around. But I would say go to our website, to read and keep up on mostly what we're doing. But if you really want to know what we're up to, get your hands on Galileo, because all of the research we do, all the podcasts, all of the articles, all of the case studies and so forth go into Galileo. And Galileo's only $39 a month, or is it $29 a month? I forget. It's very inexpensive. So, and then you get to, ask me questions through the AI as if I'm there.
Josh, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for hanging out again. Come back soon.
Thanks a million, Dan.
All right. Well, gosh, that's all the time and more that we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from PeopleRain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.